Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today's topic is the 4 contract blunders that can wreck your deal instantly. Before we get to our first point, I want to give all of you great news. We are going to be finally rolling out the Ethical Real Estate Professional designation, and it's going to happen in 2 weeks. Right? 2 weeks, Julie, isn't that what we agreed?
Yes, give or take a day or so.
All right, so all of you put your name on the interest list, and I'll tell you again how to do that in a second. You will be receiving a text with an exclusive invitation to the event, and this event is going to last about an hour. It's going to walk you through the designation. It's going to walk you through the new world of exclusive buyer's agency and why you absolutely positively want to be an ethical real estate professional exclusive buyer agent designee. So all of that is coming to you in about 2 weeks. The way to get on the interest list to receive the invitations, this is the only way you're going to get one, is by just texting the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372, and then you will be obviously sent the information when we've actually scheduled it and have the presentation ready for all of you. Be very excited about this because this is going to solve a lot of problems that you guys are, dealing with right now in the marketplace. How to make yourself unique in the marketplace, really how to show your value in the marketplace, not just as a buyer's agent, but as an agent in general. This is going to be the ultimate solution to all the things that a lot of people have been telling you to do. Build your brand. How are you going to, what are you going to do in the marketplace, in your marketplace when everyone's a quasi, real estate influencer, when everyone's got videos and everyone's got all the things? What are you going to do to really then differentiate yourself? Well, the answer is clearly ethical real estate professional. And the cool thing about this designation is there's only going to be 2,500 of these available ever for the entire United States. Now, we're probably going to be doing this in Europe and Latin America too, but just for now, it's United States. It's 2,500 designations. 2,500 agents are going to participate. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Do that right away. I think 700 agents are on the list right now. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. All right, Julie, let's roll right in. The 4 contract blunders that can wreck your deals instantly.
That's right. Negotiating has become more complicated now that the market has shifted a bit. Currently, there is a mixture of homes that are selling quickly with competing offers still, and homes that are taking longer to sell with perhaps only one offer. Some are even expiring after having 0 offers, or worse yet, rejecting offers that could have worked.
By the way, if you've been in the business for only 15 years, you've ever wondered what a really tough market is like, you're experiencing it because good news, bad news, okay? The good news is that we are, I think, arguably at the very bottom. Lawrence Yun was saying that he thinks we've been at the bottom for a while, kind of bouncing along, skipping along down the bottom of the market, right?
Exactly.
More bad news, just while I'm at it, is the fact that this is going to be the worst year for real estate sales since 2010. So Lawrence Yun is probably right. We're at the bottom. That's kind of your, good news, bad news. And the good news is we only have one place to go. And elections are going to be over. Interest rates are obviously stabilizing and going down. The demand for housing has never been stronger. So overall, right now, it's a fantastic time to be in real estate. But just do keep in mind, at the end of the day, you do have to know how to keep your deals together. So these mistakes are going to be really things that you can easily avoid, and we're going to give you examples on how to do all of it.
That's right. So let's sharpen your skills so that you can win every time. Mistake number 1, lack of communication from both the buyer's agent and the listing agent. Now, if you're a part of our coaching, you have a communications guarantee for your seller and yourself, as well as for your buyer and yourself. But what I'm talking about here is the buyer's agent and listing agent talking to each other. If you want to win, you need a meeting of the minds. And the definition of negotiating is the reaching of a mutual agreement that all parties are satisfied with. You have to actually talk to each other to make this happen. So example number 1, listing agents, if you want to receive offers that are easy to say yes to, put the desired terms into the agent-to-agent comments in the MLS, and or actually call those buyers' agents back who haunt you looking for the details that will help them win. This This is the number one complaint amongst buyer's agents right now, other than, the obvious dealing with have to get signatures on the buyer contract.
Well,
but complaints about each other is that they don't hear back from the listing agent.
Sure, and also you want to make sure listing agents you're putting into the agent-to-agent comments, seller will consider all concessions, because that'll save you from getting calls from buyer's agents asking about commissions.
Remember,
right?
the word is consider. You're not promising anything.
Right.
You're encouraging them to put it into the offer.
Exactly. So seller will consider all concessions is, basically letting the buyer's agents know to write the buyer agent commission into the contract, and most likely the seller will consider it and most likely will cover it as part of the transaction. Example number 2, Julie.
Buyer's agents actually read all the comments in the MLS and counsel your buyers to comply with as many of the terms as possible if they intend to actually win or at least be competitive. If there's comments, you must find the listing, if there are no comments, you've got to find the listing agent and ask them, other than price, what will it take to win? Does the seller want a specific closing date, a lease back, or to keep the fancy chandelier? Find out and see if you can deliver a contract they'll accept.
You've got to talk to the buyer's agents. You've got to talk to the listing agent. I realize it's not always possible, but try to talk to them as frequently as possible. Don't just assume that it's always the price. In other words, don't assume the price is the most important thing. It's a important thing, but sometimes the most important thing is something like the convenience of the move out, the seller being able to have a little bit extra time, all those types of things, because really it's hassle. That's what people are paying to avoid. You guys remember when there was a lot of iBuyers, when people were in essence wholesaling their homes? Perfectly good homes were being wholesaled to these iBuyers. Why was that happening? Because people were in essence willing to take less for their house to avoid the traditional hassles of selling. So that tells you right there that when you're making an offer on a property, don't just assume price is the most important thing, or you'll lose more often than you win.
That's right. And along those lines, a cousin to that is assuming that a quick close is what the seller wants. It might be what you want, might be what, I'm sure it's what both agents want, but it might not be advantageous to the seller. In fact, I had a story from one of our coaching clients that in all other ways were competitive. In fact, they were the highest price offer. They assumed, this is how they learned the hard way, that a quick close was going to, win the deal. And they, shockingly found out that they didn't. They asked the listing agent. The listing agent said the seller took somebody's offer that was a bit less, but gave them a lease back. To your point, the convenience sometimes has more value than a few more dollars.
And remember, if you want today's notes, they're only available at our daily newsletter, and that's harrisrealestatedaily.com. It is free. It takes 2 seconds to subscribe. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. The link is down below in the show description as well, or just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. Drop in your email. And remember, you've got to hop over to your actual email after that, and you got to confirm you want the newsletter, and you get today's notes as well as the notes from our thousands of past podcasts. Harris Real Estate Daily is our way of saying thank you to all of our very loyal podcast listeners and keeping this the number one daily listened to podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Mistake number 2, Julie.
Mistake number 2, and we have done dedicated podcasts about this, and we have a big piece in Premier Coaching about it, and that is this mistake: no lender's letter or proof of cash, a weak lender's letter, or a boilerplate letter. Those are all kind of the same category. Assuming your buyer is getting financing, their lender's letter needs to show ideally, that they are loan committed or at least pre-approved, not contingent on anything except identifying the house and maybe the appraisal. It's got to state their ratios, their credit, their employment, and down payment are all adequate and verified. In other words, they basically made it through underwriting. Additionally, the lender should call the listing agent. Pay attention. These are the deals that get ratified and accepted when you're competing. The lender on your buyer's side should, quote, vouch for the buyer's ability to close. I hear that more and more in today's market when I think it's 33% of recently closed deals did still have competitive offers. So if you intend to win, it's not enough to just, send over your lender's letter. That's not enough. You've got to actually say, again, ratios, credit, employment, and down payment are adequate and verified. And remember, a lot of agents know that they can be secretly contingent on home sale if they are simply contingent on financing that's kind of baked in. So you want to ask a lot of questions. Now, if you're a Premier Coaching member, simply use your ultimate addendum. That's what it's called. If you're on our Premier Coaching site, you can use the search thing to find ultimate addendum to avoid this mistake. There's a lot to that. I don't know if you want to hover on that or not.
No, not really, but I was just actually making a note to include that in the EREP.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is, because we need to include that ultimate addendum for buyer's agents to basically make sure the lenders are doing a good job.
Yes, that's right. And it gets down to asking those questions. If you get a boilerplate, the buyer is pre-approved to buy. Okay, that doesn't really tell you at that price range, that their down payment is verified, they're not actually contingent on anything. Lots of different things go into that.
So Premier Coaching members, just go to the Harris Learning portal and just put in the word Ultimate Addendum and you'll find this. You should definitely be including this in every single contract you do. If you're a listing agent and all the terms and conditions come in perfectly, but the lender's letter is a little sus, you accept all the terms and conditions and give the lender and the buyer's agent maybe 24 hours to provide an adequate lender's letter per the requirements of the Ultimate Addendum. If you're on the buyer side, use the Ultimate Addendum as your way of policing the lender's letters that you're receiving so you don't end up working with buyers that aren't actually qualified. I mean, these are very important things. Now, if you're not in Premier Coaching, you can join Premier Coaching for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com. Premiercoaching.com does include a month of free coaching, including a daily semi-private coaching call. You can also text the word Premier,
Premier,
to 47372. Just text the word Premier to 47372, or just go to premiercoaching.com and join Premier Coaching. It is your fast track to all things with regards to building your real estate business. So do that right away. And like I said, it does include a daily semi-private coaching call with a Harris certified coach. Mistake number 3, Julie Harris.
All right, now mistake number 3, I think happens a lot because people don't actually read their DocuSigns. This is the type of thing that gets embedded, several paragraphs in. And it comes in different flavors. That mistake is not being specific about the seller's concessions. This can range from asking for a specific type of home warranty for a specific price to asking for thousands of dollars towards the buyer's closing costs, and now, of course, compensation. So the first issue is easy. Check the box in the offer stating that the buyer wants a home warranty. Then state which warranty, that it's for 1 year, and that will cost X. This is something that agents argue about that I see all the time. That's easy to fix. Just do what it says. Make sure that you point it out to your clients that it's in there. Now, all of the home warranty companies have FAQs online and salespeople who can answer your questions. I know a lot of agents got away from asking for home warranties because it was so competitive. So adjust accordingly, whether you want to put that in or not.
And remember, a listing agent, you can put home warranties on your properties before they're actually in contract, thus covering any repairs that are necessary as a result of the home inspection. You heard me correctly. So you list a house, you put a home warranty on it, you put seller's coverage on it. It's not that expensive. The seller will pay for all this, obviously. Any repairs that come as a result that are covered under the home warranty, that goes in contract, the buyer does the inspection, the buyer finds some issues with covered items. Well, guess what? The home warranty will cover the seller. And they'll be, frankly, thanking their lucky stars that you had them buy a home warranty that they would have ended up paying for anyway, but it would have only benefited the buyer. But because you were smart enough to add seller's coverage, it benefits them as well. These are all things we teach you in Premier Coaching, by the way.
Yes, I highly recommend that. We used to do that on our listings, and it saved so much hassle and stress. It's crazy. Typically, it's things that are HVAC, electric, plumbing, all the, typical home inspection things. It doesn't cover the roof or the foundation, but pretty much everything in between.
Every house, except maybe brand new ones, well, even brand new ones, are going to have home warranty issues because a house is a big living organism, lots of mechanical systems. And, there's always going to be issues. And the issues are always going to cost more in the eyes of the buyer than they actually should cost when it actually comes to doing the repair. A little leak in plumbing in a buyer's mind, so they don't know, it's going to cost like $1 billion, whereas you could have it fixed for $40, or even better yet, have the home warranty fix it with maybe what's the deductible, $25?
It depends on what you've got, but 25 to 125, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Good.
You mentioned something that I don't think we've ever mentioned when we talk about, the sideline of warranties. New-ish construction, like 3 to 5 year old homes. I discovered something when we were closing a lot of those where we didn't do the seller's coverage because it was a relatively new house. What could be wrong, right? And yet something comes up. So remember that almost every builder has a 10-year builder warranty on the house. And even if that doesn't cover the appliances have manufacturer's warranties that you can use if it's not that old. Now, if the house is 15 years old, you're probably out of luck and should have done a warranty from the get-go. But remember that those things exist. Okay. Again, discussions on our
How about let's give them
daily
advanced
coaching.
player mode? If you have rental properties, you can put home warranties on your rental properties. And that's what we do on all of our rental properties,
Yep.
and we have dozens of them. So when the tenant has any sort of problem that's covered under the home warranty, they don't call our property managers. They call the actual home warranty company, and they have to pay the deductible. So if they clog the toilet, it's in our lease that they're going to have to pay the deductible to have the toilet fixed. And as soon as we implemented that, guess what happened? We stopped having clogged toilets.
Yeah, exactly. You do have to authorize them to talk to your warranty company, but that's one phone call. All right, so now the second issue, we're talking about the issue of not being specific in seller's concessions. Now, let's say that you're asking the seller to contribute $5,000 towards buyer closing costs. You, again, after speaking with your buyer and your lender, you're not just going to write that in. Let's say that's what they want or what they need, and that's something you have to specify what the funds are going to. Maybe it's buying down the interest rate, paying prepaid costs like taxes, homeowners insurance, prepaid HOA deposits. That is all appropriate to bake into $5,000, say, towards buyer closing costs. Ask for a good faith estimate so that you can be specific. And note to self, some lenders will inflate or pad their costs when they know the seller contributes thousands to the deal. Failure to be careful when you're dealing with dollars will almost always bite you in the butt before closing. We did sell real estate for a living, and this is how we know these things. Guess who's going to pay the price if there's confusion? Do a buyer's net sheet. Do a seller's net sheet. Make sure you're all literally on the same page regarding where all the money is going. Your broker can help you. We help you in coaching with buyer and seller net sheets. It's something that, I mean, honestly, I would not proceed to even get an inspection if you hadn't already had that discussion.
I agree. Mistake number 4.
All right, here we are. Escalation clauses, escape clauses, appraisal waivers. Oh my. These are grouped together because the mistake is basically the same. There are 2 levels to this. The first one starts with the agent, that's all of you listening, understanding these clauses or waivers and what they actually mean. And the second part has to do with the buyers and sellers understanding. It should not be in the contract if you can't first explain it yourself. Okay, so maybe practice explaining that before you're in front of your clients. Now, example number 1, we're going to talk about all 3 here.
And by the way, all these all these different types of clauses are all waiting for you, pre-written. Obviously, use your MLS or your broker's approval. Check what we have on the website on Premier Coaching just to make sure it's compliant with your market. Probably is because we've used these forever. So yeah, there it is. It's all waiting for you, so you don't have to decode all of this yourself. Example 1, Julie.
All right, example number 1, escalation clauses. If your contract states that your buyer will go $1,000 above the highest and best other offers, it also needs to state not to exceed blank. Otherwise, when your buyer finds out the price they actually have to beat, they might not qualify or be willing to deliver or be able to deliver, and thus you've wasted everyone's time. Note to self, make sure the buyer is actually qualified to go that high, and I would not just, I'm not saying buyers are lying about that, but I would talk to the lender, because while you've been looking, maybe rates went up and their savings went down, they still have to qualify if you're doing this escalation up to a higher price.
Well, also, Julie, you can, Conforming loans, they can go up to 6%. You can have 6% concessions on a conforming loan, of just assuming that it appraises. So if it's like a $500,000 house, let's say the contract price is $500,000, but it actually appraises, it can appraise for say $530,000. You could actually have, $30,000 for the concessions in there, and you could finance it as part of the deal. So just, you have to know all these.
But you do have to talk to the lender.
Yeah, you do have to talk to the lender, but you also have to know how to actually word all this. Again, we teach you this in coaching.
That's right. Okay. Example number 2, escape clauses. These come in many flavors, the most common being a home sale contingency. It might sound something like this. Seller accepts with the following contingency. Home will still be marketed, and if an equal offer with no home sale contingency is presented, the buyer will be given 72 hours to remove their home sale contingency and proceed to close or become a backup offer. Now, let me clarify because agents get tangled up in this. They're given 72 hours to just remove their home sale contingency. That doesn't mean they're closing in 72 hours. It means to proceed to closing. So you might modify the closing date, or maybe they can't or won't remove their home sale contingency, but they do want to be a backup offer in case the new offer tanks for some reason.
Let's give you guys some advanced coaching on this. And Julie and I learned this one the hard way years ago. But you might get a offer on a property. It's contingent on financing, and let's just say it's the lender letter because you didn't know how to use our. What's it called again?
Ultimate addendum.
Our ultimate addendum. You're not using the ultimate addendum, so you actually don't know how to actually interpret what a lender's letter is, what it should say, whether the verifications have been done. But you just accept it because after all, it's a lender's letter. The offer's great. The terms are great. So we're in contract. But then you later find out that the buyer can't get financing, and you ask as to why, and it turns out the buyer had a house to sell. So you then say, well, why wasn't this contract written contingent on home sale? And the agent, the buyer's agent, will say, well, it was written contingent on financing, and the financing was contingent on the home sale. But because you didn't have the ultimate addendum that's in Premier Coaching, you actually let that one get by you, and now you're going to end up probably losing that listing if you're on the seller side because you weren't wise enough to, essentially vet that lender's letter. That's the reason the ultimate addendum exists, and hopefully you guys are listening to this not thinking as a buyer's agent you're going to be clever with your lender's letters and hiding your home sale contingencies, and that's how you're going to sneak a home sale past the listing agent because we're going to tell them.
Yeah, that's right. You have to be really careful. And I think that, as I said before, having DocuSign, actually makes these things a little bit worse because I know we're all guilty of just, zooming through that and clicking on initial here and signature there. I had that happen on one of our rentals because I just assumed that it was the usual document and we hadn't written in that they are responsible for paying for utilities. So now the tenant turns that and says, oh, well, because it wasn't in there. So we had to redo the lease. So I'm guilty of that, zooming through and signing everything. You have to read everything. You have to explain everything. Ask if they have questions. If they have a question or you're not sure how to answer that, say, I'm going to get some advice from my coach or my broker. I'll get you an answer within an hour and then call them right back.
That's right. All right, Julie, next one is
appraisal waivers.
Appraisal waivers.
Okay.
Example 3.
Yes, this is fine if the buyer's all cash. And remember, it's usually 25 to 30% of recent sales have indeed been all cash, depending on where you live. But if there is financing involved, the lender better be okay with the appraisal waiver. Otherwise, you've got your buyer into contract on a home that the lender might not approve them for or clear them to close if it doesn't actually appraise for what they're in contract for. If it's an appraisal gap your buyer's guaranteeing, make sure they also have the cash to support that and up to how much before they're dipping into their down payment money. See how we're talking about numbers here.
So we also, though this isn't in Julie's notes, we also should probably remind all of you, especially in Florida, you better be making sure you're very knowledgeable about what the various homeowners associations and property owners insurance is becoming because of all the hurricanes. In Florida, we've got, real estate agents that have been, really well established in these markets for long periods of time. And now their inventory is sitting forever because of the fact that the buildings themselves are now essentially having these big, every owner has to pay some ridiculous amount of money to get the building up to a certain standard in terms of safety and the homeowner's insurance. So all these things. So the expenses of owning some properties in some markets has gone through the roof.
Yes.
That's going to actually, even though the purchase price might be fine, the terms might be fine, but all the added expenses that come with owning that particular property will blow that potential buyer out. And that is going to cause some de-escalation of prices in those particular markets of those particular products.
Well, you may make some serious pricing decisions along with your seller depending on what that profile is. How close you are to the coast and what street does that extra insurance drop off, how far inland you have to be, all of that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Asheville since nobody in Asheville even had flood insurance and it's not in any floodplain whatsoever. They're 2,500 feet. I don't know how that's going to go with insurance. So, but you guys need to figure it out. All right. As I said before, prepare buyer net sheets and seller net sheets depending on which side you're on. Failing to discuss the real numbers can set you up for uncomfortable pre-closing conflict.
Asheville's really 2,500 feet?
Yeah.
A hurricane hitting 2,500 feet above sea level.
Yeah, no wonder everybody was surprised and didn't have flood insurance.
Doesn't even make sense.
It's crazy, right? Okay, so critical bonus point. After all the hard work you do for your buyers, think of what we just discussed. Making sure you don't make any of these mistakes from today's podcast. Are you also getting your exclusive buyer agency contract signed? If not, you could be doing all that hard work for free. Do you have a buyer presentation, buyer scripts, unique selling propositions, guarantees, and a buyer net sheet that you know how to use?
And most importantly, do you have, ultimately, guys, when you're sitting in front of a prospective buyer in the future, do you realize you're going to have to compete for that buyer's signature on your exclusive contract? Julie and I were on the phone last week with some reporters, and these reporters were real estate reporters, and they didn't understand. And one of them actually kind of got mad at me. And, fortunately, it didn't really work. It didn't really result in, fisticuffs. But let's just say this person was embarrassed because they didn't realize how different an exclusive buyer agency contract was versus the buyer agency contracts that have been in place for 30 years. They didn't realize that the exclusive, which now have to be signed by every buyer, prior to the first showing, and even if you're doing a one-time showing agreement, it still has to be signed, that clearly states who's paying the commission. In other words, the buyer agent commission is no longer an entitlement to the transaction. The buyer on paper has to be liable for paying your commission. We're going to show you an ethical real estate professional various ways to get it paid. One of them is the buyer paying it, but we think that's going to happen like less than 1% of the time based on the system we put in place. But that aside, do you have a way of truly explaining to that buyer why they'd want to sign an exclusive contract with just you? You're going to be in a market in the spring, really probably now, where the buyer is literally going to be comparing you as their buyer's agent to another buyer and another buyer's agent. You're going to have to show why they'd want to sign exclusively with you. So the idea that being a buyer's agent means you didn't have to have sales skills and you don't have to learn how to compete and all the rest of it, those days are over. Just like the listing agents had to for over 100 years, quite literally, show their value to the seller and explain why that seller
and compete.
Right, and compete. You're going to have to be as competitive as a listing agent's always been, and I think even more so.
I think more so too, because here's the thing. It's not, yes, you are having to compete against other agents. And we're not just speculating. I have had coaching clients tell me that they were aware that and this is not just like random cold leads. Some of this is their own past clients who, when they say, well, you've got to sign this because now it's the rule, they say, well, you never had me sign that before. And then they go around asking everybody else, and there's still too much confusion out there. And you can actually drive them away. It's not just competing agent to agent. You also are competing against the buyer themselves, believing, because there's been headlines about this, what do you need a buyer's agent for? You've got Zillow, you've got Realtor.com. They're just opening doors for you. Okay, so you've got to compete against the buyer themselves. That buyer sometimes will decide just to go to the listing agent, the open house agent, or the new construction sales agent. So you actually have more competition. I think, to your point, maybe it's worse than on the listing side. At least on the listing side, you know who you're dealing with.
Because agents that are poorly presenting are running off their prospective buyers. And
because their only script now is you have to sign it because it's the rule.
Yeah, because you guys don't honestly know how to get contracts signed. I say that with love, but it's true. Buyers agents have been kind of spoiled for generations because the buyer agent commission has been an entitlement to the transaction. The listing goes for sale. It's a 6% commission or whatever it is. You bring the buyer writes the offer, half the commission or whatever it is goes to the buyer's agent. Those days are over and done with. That's the reality. I'm sorry to be telling you if you're hearing this for the first time. I know it sounds strange, especially after literally 100 years of doing it the other way, but now you have to have an exclusive signed. And how are you going to do that? What's your plan to really make you unique? What's your plan to make it so that you show your value to the prospective buyer? We've done the heavy lifting for you. That's what Ethical Real Estate Professional is all about. You should check out the website. I think as soon as you see the website, you'll get an idea of how in-depth and really, I think, fantastic this designation is going to be. And then by all means, get yourself on the interest list so you can be invited to the launch of this new designation with this Ethical Real Estate Professional Exclusive Buyers Agency. And that's becoming available probably the next 2 weeks. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Every one of you listening, there's thousands of you listening right now. Probably today, 6,000 or 7,000 downloads will happen from today's podcast. We've only got 700 of you that have texted interest in it. There's no way not all 6,000 or 7,000 of you aren't going to benefit greatly from this. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Don't wait to find out what we've been telling you for all these last really 6 months in earnest, but probably more like 3 years about the, essentially the what's going to happen with buyers agents. Don't wait for you to experience going to a closing, having worked with that buyer, gone through the whole process, waiting around at the closing for your commission check and not receiving one, because that's actually what's happening. Buyers agents are showing up at closings because they didn't write it in the contract as a concession from the seller. They didn't realize that the buyer agent commission wasn't automatically getting paid anymore. No one told them, because who's going to tell you? The listing agent? Nope. The title company? Nope.
You can't check the MLS for it anymore.
Exactly. So how are you going to know? Well, you're going to find out the hard way, a lot of you, and you're going to lose. What's the average commission out there? $12,000. $12,000? It doesn't make sense. Don't learn the hard way. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372.
That's right. Don't wait. How many buyer mistakes are you going to rack up? How much money are you going to lose before you correct course? So today's podcast, we gave you a whole bunch of contract things that you can correct, but the Ethical Real Estate Professional is how you up your game, show that you are professional. That headline, articulate your value. Now's the time. Don't delay. So let's get to work.
Have a fantastic day. I'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.